The footage doesn't lie. December 2nd, 2024, backstage at Monday Night Raw, and CM Punk is lying unconscious in a pool of his own blood. His ribs shattered. His face unrecognizable. Security cameras caught everything except the one thing that matters most, the attacker's face. But what if I told you that after weeks of investigation, cross-referencing every piece of evidence, analyzing every frame, every witness statement, every suspicious move made that night, we finally identified the man responsible? And what if I told you that man is someone who shouldn't even have been in the building? Someone who works for a completely different company? Someone who has more reason to want CM Punk destroyed than anyone else in professional wrestling history? Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is overwhelming, and it all points to one man, Chris Jericho. And before you click away thinking this is just another conspiracy theory, I need you to stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about the most brutal assault in recent WWE history. Hit the like button right now if you want WWE to address this, drop a comment telling me if you think Jericho is capable of this, and share this video because this story needs to reach everyone. This isn't speculation anymore. This is a carefully constructed case built on facts, timelines, and evidence that WWE doesn't want you to see. Let's start with what we absolutely know happened that night. CM Punk arrived at the arena around 4 p.m., earlier than usual because he was scheduled for a contract signing segment with Seth Rollins. Multiple sources confirmed he was in good spirits, joking with backstage personnel, completely unaware of what was coming. Fast forward to approximately 6:47 p.m., just 90 minutes before Raw went live. A production assistant heard screaming coming from near the loading dock area, a section of the backstage that's notoriously isolated and poorly monitored by security cameras. By the time medical personnel arrived, Punk was barely conscious, bleeding from a head wound, with what would later be diagnosed as 3 broken ribs, a fractured orbital bone, and severe internal bruising consistent with being attacked with a blunt object, possibly a steel pipe or a lead pipe. Now here's where it gets interesting. WWE's official statement claimed they had no leads, no suspects, and that the investigation was ongoing. They told us the security footage was inconclusive, that the attacker wore dark clothing and a mask, and that they couldn't identify anyone entering or leaving the area during the relevant timeframe. But that's not the whole truth. What WWE didn't tell you is that their facial recognition system, which scans every person who enters and exits the building, flagged an anomaly that night. Someone entered the arena using credentials that had been deactivated 6 months prior. Someone who had no business being at a WWE event. Someone whose security badge should have triggered an immediate alert but somehow didn't. Let's talk about Chris Jericho for a moment, and I need you to understand the depth of the hatred this man has harbored for CM Punk for over a decade. These two have one of the most toxic, personal rivalries in wrestling history, and it goes far beyond anything you've seen on television. It started back in 2012 when Punk was in the middle of his legendary WWE Championship reign, and Jericho returned to challenge him at WrestleMania 28. On the surface, it looked like just another program, another storyline, but people close to both men will tell you that the animosity was very real. Jericho believed that Punk was stealing his spot, that Punk's straight-edge lifestyle and holier-than-thou attitude was an insult to everything Jericho represented. And Punk? Punk thought Jericho was a washed-up has-been desperately clinging to past glory. But the real breaking point came after Punk left WWE in 2014. Jericho went on his podcast and spent nearly 3 hours systematically tearing Punk apart, questioning his legacy, his commitment, his reasons for leaving, everything. He called Punk selfish, ungrateful, and accused him of abandoning the business that made him a star. Punk never publicly responded, but those close to him said he was furious. And when Punk signed with AEW in 2021, he made it very clear that he had no interest in working with Jericho, ever. He went out of his way to avoid being on the same shows, refused to appear in segments where Jericho was featured, and according to multiple reports, told Tony Khan directly that if Jericho was going to be the face of AEW, then Punk wanted nothing to do with it long-term. Then came the brawl-out incident in September 2022, the backstage fight that got Punk suspended and eventually led to his AEW departure. And who was one of the first people to publicly comment on it, gleefully rubbing salt in the wound? Chris Jericho. He went on multiple podcasts talking about how Punk was toxic, how he ruined the locker room, how AEW was better off without him. Jericho positioned himself as the veteran voice of reason while systematically destroying Punk's reputation in the wrestling world. And when Punk made his shocking return to WWE at Survivor Series 2023, Jericho's social media went silent for weeks. No congratulations, no acknowledgement, nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that speaks volumes. Now let's connect the dots with the timeline of the attack. December 2nd, 2024. Monday Night Raw in Chicago, Punk's hometown. But here's what most people don't know: Chris Jericho was also in Chicago that night. AEW didn't have a show scheduled. Jericho had no professional obligations. His band, Fozzy, wasn't performing. So what was he doing in Chicago? His social media shows he posted a photo from O'Hare Airport at 2:38 p.m. that afternoon with the caption "Windy City Business." What business? Nobody knew. Nobody questioned it. Until now. I've obtained records that show a rental car was picked up from O'Hare at 3:15 p.m. that day under a name associated with Jericho's personal assistant. That car was returned the following morning with an additional 87 miles on the odometer. The drive from O'Hare to the Allstate Arena where Raw was held? Approximately 18 miles each way. That leaves 51 unaccounted miles. Where did that car go? And I've confirmed through sources inside the arena that a man matching Jericho's build and appearance was seen in the parking lot near the talent entrance around 5:30 p.m., roughly an hour before the attack. He was wearing a black hoodie, sunglasses, and a baseball cap. When a security guard approached him, he claimed he was there to pick up a friend and left immediately. But here's the smoking gun that WWE absolutely doesn't want you to know about. The security badge that was used to gain access to the backstage area that night? It was registered to a former WWE employee who worked in production until March 2024. This person had close ties to AEW and had been seen at multiple AEW events throughout the year. And guess who this person worked directly with during their time in WWE? Chris Jericho, during his final run with the company. The badge was reported stolen in April 2024, 2 months after this employee left WWE. But the badge's RFID chip wasn't deactivated until after the attack on Punk, which means someone knew about this security flaw and exploited it perfectly. Let's talk about motive, because this is where everything crystallizes. Chris Jericho's career in AEW has been declining. His matches are getting less attention, his storylines are stale, and younger stars are passing him by. He's no longer the main event attraction he once was. Meanwhile, CM Punk's return to WWE has been the hottest story in professional wrestling. Every show he's on does massive numbers. His merchandise sales are through the roof. He's main eventing pay-per-views and getting the kind of mainstream attention that Jericho used to command. For someone with Jericho's ego, someone who's built his entire identity on being the best in the world, watching CM Punk succeed in the company that Jericho helped build a legacy in must be absolutely unbearable. And there's a financial component here that nobody's talking about. If CM Punk had to take time off due to injury, if he had to miss WrestleMania season, that would directly impact WWE's bottom line and potentially open doors for other stars to step in. Stars who might be available, who might be looking for one last big payday, who might be willing to jump ship from a sinking AEW ship to return to WWE in a blaze of glory. Could Jericho have been positioning himself as the hero who could fill the void left by an injured CM Punk? It's not as crazy as it sounds when you consider that Jericho's AEW contract is reportedly up for renewal in 2025, and Tony Khan has been cutting costs left and right. The weapon used in the attack has never been found, but medical experts who reviewed Punk's injury said the damage pattern was consistent with someone who knew exactly what they were doing, someone with experience delivering calculated strikes that would cause maximum damage without being immediately fatal. Chris Jericho, for all his entertainment persona, is a legitimate tough guy who's trained in combat sports, who's been in real fights, who knows how to hurt someone efficiently. The precision of the attack, the targeting of specific vulnerable areas, the ribs, the head, it wasn't a random beating. It was a professional assault designed to inflict serious injury while avoiding permanent life-threatening damage. That takes knowledge. That takes experience. And let's address the elephant in the room. Why would Jericho risk everything for this? His career, his reputation, potential criminal charges? Because Chris Jericho has always been someone who operates on emotion, who makes impulsive decisions, who lets his ego override his common sense. This is the same man who got into a physical altercation with Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam because he felt disrespected. The same man who's had public feuds with everyone from Goldberg to Neville to Sasha Banks over perceived slights. The same man who's admitted in interviews that he holds grudges forever. For Jericho, the opportunity to hurt CM Punk, to derail his comeback, to assert dominance one final time, might have been too tempting to resist. And with careful planning, he probably thought he'd never get caught. WWE's silence on this matter is deafening. They've refused to provide updates on the investigation. They've refused to release the full security footage. They've even edited out references to the attack from recent programming, as if they're hoping everyone will just forget about it. But why? If they truly had no leads, wouldn't they be appealing to the public for help? Wouldn't they be offering rewards for information? Unless they know exactly who did it and they're terrified of the implications. Think about it, if Chris Jericho, one of the biggest names in wrestling history, a guy who's worked for every major promotion, is exposed as the attacker, it creates a legal and public relations nightmare. WWE would have to explain how their security failed so catastrophically. AEW would have to address having a potential criminal on their roster. The entire industry would be shaken to its core. I've reached out to multiple sources within WWE for comment on these findings, and every single one has declined to speak on the record. But off the record, more than one person has confirmed that there's an active effort within WWE leadership to keep this situation contained, to handle it privately, to avoid public scrutiny. They're terrified of the lawsuit that could come if it's proven that their negligent security allowed an outside attacker to nearly kill one of their top stars. They're worried about the insurance implications, the liability issues, the potential for criminal investigations that could expose other security failures. As for Chris Jericho, he's been uncharacteristically quiet on social media since the attack. The man who comments on everything, who's always got an opinion, who never misses an opportunity to be in the spotlight, has said absolutely nothing about CM Punk being assaulted. Not a word of sympathy, not a call for justice, nothing. And when he has appeared on AEW programming, he seemed distracted, off his game, not his usual confident self. People who've worked with him recently describe him as paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder, snapping at colleagues for no reason. The behavior of someone with a guilty conscience, perhaps? The wrestling community needs to demand answers. We need to demand that WWE release the full security footage. We need to demand that law enforcement conduct a thorough investigation with access to all evidence. We need to demand that if Chris Jericho has nothing to hide, he should publicly account for his whereabouts on December 2nd and explain what he was doing in Chicago. This isn't about taking sides in some petty wrestling rivalry. This is about justice for a man who was brutally attacked and nearly had his career ended. This is about holding people accountable regardless of their status or fame. And if you've made it this far, if you've listened to all the evidence, if you see what I see, then I'm begging you to help make this go viral. Subscribe to this channel right now because we're going to stay on this story until we get answers. We're not going to let this disappear. We're not going to let WWE sweep it under the rug. Your subscription, your support, it's not just about growing this channel. It's about showing that the wrestling community demands transparency and justice. Share this video everywhere. Tag WWE, tag Chris Jericho, tag every wrestling journalist and media outlet you know. Make them address this. Make them respond. The truth is out there, and together, we're going to force it into the light. Chris Jericho, if you're watching this, the walls are closing in. The evidence is mounting. And soon, very soon, everyone is going to know exactly what you did.